What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC San Antonio, which goes down this afternoon. Of course, the prelims are going to start here at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, we lost 2 fights over the past 2 days. And, of course, that main card starts 7 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, this entire event will air live on ESPN. First off, I'm joined by the fighter and now the girl dad, Pete Rogers Jr. Congratulations, Pete. I know it's been a crazy couple of days for you and your world. We're glad to see that you're here. I will tell everyone, when Pete texted me the other night, he's like, hey, want to do a show on Saturday? I was like, really? You're down?
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you guys so much. Incredible experience. Incredible experience. It's been awesome. And got some new motivation just for everything. You know what I mean? You got a reason behind everything now. So so we got a Binka tournament today for baby Leah. That's what we got to do. So that's what we're going to try to do and break down the card for you guys.
Yeah, last week I was looking good up until the main event, co-main event. I was at third in the haymaker contest, and I was like, well, this ain't gonna last. I knew it was not gonna last, but so basically what we're gonna do is for the first 30 minutes of the show, we're gonna break down these fights. We kind of go a little rapid fire on all these fights. In the last 30 minutes of the show will be Q&A. So line up those questions in the chat. I know there was already a question pre-show about kind of in terms of how to use Fantasy Cruncher today. And me and Pete we'll kind of talk. I guess we can talk a little game theory here, Pete, because me and you were talking about this right before the show started, and you said to me, how many underdogs do you think come in today? And and you mentioned 2, the number 3, and I felt like 2 is a safe, but you brought up the point of maybe today the way to build lineups is having 3 underdogs in your lineup.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you what, whenever I look at a card and I don't feel comfortable building a parlay, that's the type of slate I want to attack with underdogs. And that's kind of where I'm getting today, where even some of these ugly options, they have paths to victory. Like I can make a case for Daniel Lacerda. I can make a case for Daniel Pineda. I can make a case for a lot of these fighters. Do I trust them? No, but I don't need to trust any of these fighters, especially if I'm max entering a 150. So what I did for my construction today, and we'll see if I'm off. I've been running on like no sleep and all that, but earlier in the week I did my research, and I really like some of these spots for some of the underdogs. So how I did it is I wanted to get to between 2 and 3 underdogs in all my lineups. I think there's going to be 3. So almost all my lineups have 3 underdogs. It seems like a slate like that. And obviously with the more underdogs you have, the more salary is going to be left on the table. The more unique your lineups are going to be, the less you spend your salary, the more unique and possibilities of taking down a tournament. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then I prioritize some fights that I think are extremely relevant for GPPs. Like we'll touch on this later, but real quick, Daniel Lacerda, CJ Vergara, Tucker Lutz, Daniel Pineda, Albert Duraev, Chidi and Njokuani. I made a group over on stochastic.fantasycruncher.com, and I wanted to get between 1 and 3 of each of those fighters.
Of course, mention about Stochastic. If you want to take advantage of the promo they got for our listeners, it does help out me and Pete. You can check that out in the show notes below. Also, be sure to enter that Fight HQ contest over there on DraftKings. And you beat me last week. I gotta get you beat me like 2 weeks in a row. I gotta get back on this winning train.
I still have not cashed anything, so I don't even know if that's technically like beating. Like, what?
Well, you scored better than me. I guess
Okay,
that would be the best way to put it. But when you talk about underdogs, obviously the underdog to me that a lot of people are going to go to is Marlon Vera in the main event. He is 7,600 on DK. Over on FanDuel, he's $17, and Corey Sandhagen, $22 on FanDuel, $8,600 on DraftKings. This is like, one of the things I think this is a great live betting opportunity if you're looking at the betting side of this fight, especially with '𝗨𝗵𝐺, because we all know '𝗨𝗵𝐺 is notoriously a slow starter. That's who he is. But like, this is one of those fights, like you can get different than the field by avoiding this fight, but I'm scared to death to avoid this fight because I feel like the winner of this fight is going to break the slate.
Yeah, so let's see. How much of my lineups did I get away from the main event? So I would agree with you and say that it's very difficult to get away from it. It's just at a sweet spot for um, roster construction, especially like Marlon Vera is so cheap, and if I don't necessarily consider Corey Sandhagen some crazy finisher within the division, and Marlon Vera is tough, he could possibly still do enough in a loss in a 5 round back and forth environment. The issue with Marlon Vera is clearly that he gets behind on the scorecards, and throws less volume a lot of times, more damaging strikes in some of his previous matchups. But from a volume standpoint, Sandhagen is your guy. You want to go after the guy who's throwing ridiculous amounts of volume, and it comes down to balancing volume versus damage and who's going to win out. I can't really tell you. I initially wanted Corey Sandhagen, but the more I started constructing my lineups, and just I think the way that, even though I'm picking Corey Sandhagen to win, I have an uncomfortable amount of Marlon Vera just because of the price, because of the 5 rounds, because of he's on a heater. He's been like damn near untouchable, and he finds a way to win. So I just think the damaging strikes, I don't know, man. It just seems so cheap, and everybody's flocking the other direction. And, I kind of just wanted to get a little bit more aggressive, especially because he's in an underdog salary there at 7,600. So, with all that being said, I have a lot more than the field of Marlon Vera and slightly less of Corey Sandhagen. And that does scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that on the Corey Sandhagen side of this fight, what I like about it is that volume. But yeah, I talked about this on my show on Thursday. When you go back to that fight that Chito Vera had against Rob Font landed like 120 more strikes, but it was the more damaging shots. When we talk about this, the triple D's in judging: damage, dominance, and duration. And that's what when you look at Chito Vera, that's where he can go here. I want to get to both sides of this fight, but I think it's going to be one of those situations that, in terms of multi-entry lineups, Pete, I'll probably try to put in some type of, maybe to only get 70% exposure on the main event, just so I can have some lineups that don't have it. I don't, me, I'm not a stacking person. Now, I did stack last week with the main event. It did work out in some cash games for me, did not work out in GPPs, but I don't mind stacking this fight.
I agree with you. And I actually did stack. Make sure if you're using Fantasy Cruncher, you go into the advanced options and you enable the stacking feature, because you're not going to just automatically have it if you're basic crunching. So I did that as well, and I think my exposure to the main event from one side or the other or a stack is in total like 80%. So I think 20% of my 150 lineups are without the main event, which is still kind of scary to me, because I am anticipating a high volume Corey Sandhagen or a back and forth crazy fight from Marlon Vera at an underdog salary. So I still think 20% is fine. There's other fights on here that seem like GPP priorities.
Oh, no doubt about it. Now let's move over to the co-main event. It's Holly Holm taking on Yana Santos. Holly Holm 9,000 on DK, Santos 7,200, and then 23 and 8 over there on FanDuel. 41-year-old Holly Holm, and I mean, look, I talk about this all the time, Pete. Father time catch that everyone. I just don't know if this is necessarily the fight, but I also don't know how much I really want to get to Holly Holm in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm completely off of this fight, and full transparency, I just don't have it. Um, I don't like the price tag associated with Holly Holm, their previous, training partners. So that has to account for something. They know each other pretty well. A lot of times we don't see like crazy fights when previous, sparring partners and training partners are together, and they know each other pretty well. I think this is going to be mostly back and forth against the cage on the outside, pitter patter striking. Holly Holm priced at 9,000. Outside of the Irene Aldana 5 round decision, there was one time in a 3 round fight, where she put together a 15-minute performance, scoring over 100 points, and that was against Megan Anderson, going to the takedown well, 4 of 8. And I do think that this can be a back and forth takedown affair, or stifling each other against the cage and reversing position. And next thing you know, 15 minutes goes by, and you're like, who cares who won? Um, I'm just off this fight. So if Yana Santos goes out there and puts together a couple takedowns, some top control, maybe bullies Holly Holm a little bit, I'm going to be on the outside looking in. But the way I'm constructing today, I'm getting more aggressive on some of these uglier options, And I just don't see ceiling performances from either one of these fighters. A decision win at 7,200 for Giannis Santos can definitely do it. I'm just expecting a 15-minute decision in favor of Holly Holm. That's kind of low scoring.
And we always talk about this, Pete, targeting the underdog in female matchups. It seems to work out more times than not. It's one of these fights that and we talk about this all the time, of that ceiling in terms of a DFS score. I think this is probably, I would probably more, if you're in a state that has betting, maybe you look at that decision prop, either fighter winning by decision. That's probably the way I would go with that one. Let's move over. Next up, we got Nate Landwehr taking on Austin Lingo. Nate Landwehr is a 2-1 betting favorite, plus 170 for Austin Lingo, 9,400 for Nate on DK, 19 on FanDuel, and Austin is 6,800 on DK, 11 on FanDuel. You know what I think is a sneaky play on Prize Picks today?
What's that?
Is he over a half takedown for Nate Landwehr?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because he mixes it really well. And as much as he wants to be a psychopath on the feet and trade shots, he does incorporate takedowns. So I will say that he's more well-rounded than Austin Lingo. He went 1 of 2 in the takedown department against Ludovit Klein, en route to his third-round submission finish. He went 3 of 4 in the takedown department against David Onama, en route to a majority decision win. And David Onama's pretty damn skilled, and same with Ludovit Klein. I think that Austin Lingo's good, but I think there's clearly an advantage if you can take him down. So I would agree with you. I'm not expecting a quick finish in this fight. It can certainly happen based on the aggressiveness of each one of these guys. The price tag is a little concerning for Nate Landwehr for me, in my opinion. It's just like, in all of his UFC tenure, he's not really scored over 100 points significantly. 9,400, we want to see fighters go out there and get 110 plus. He scored 103 against David Onama. That's solid, but that's not really like breaking the slate material. Austin Lingo is a guy that I think the public likes quite a bit today. I'm getting to him aggressively because he's one of the underdogs I think can actually win a back and forth crazy war or have enough in a loss based on his salary at 6,800. Jacob Kilburn, not UFC caliber. Luis Aldana, not really UFC caliber either. So I do think that he throws heavy shots, and we have seen Landwehr somewhat, susceptible to the big shots. But Lingo's not my favorite 6,000 option to pull off the upset. I'm considering him, and looking at the field, I have a lot of him, but I'm still not picking him to win. It's more of like an absolute dart throw punt in a loss. Maybe lands a big overhand right in a crazy exchange of hooks. But I am anticipating Nate Landwehr to win at 9,400. I think it's going to be a solid decision win.
Yeah, you want to talk about the mentality of Nate Landwehr? He's at America and says, "Hey, you need me to take a short notice fight in Russia and #1 global? Yeah, I'm there."
Yeah, he's savage.
Yeah, savage, crazy man. He's going to fight for your money. I think that's one way, but it's one of those situations, and I haven't done my lineups yet. I'm going to do that after we get done with the show here. I'm interested to see how much Nate Landwehr I get to, because I do think there is a very high upside if he is able to go that takedown route, maybe gets a knockdown. There's a potential there, but like you said, the price tag is a little concerning there. Let's move over. Next up, we got a female matchup. Mayce Barber taking on Andrea Lee. Mayce Barber, she is a -280 betting favorite on DK. She's 9,100 on FanDuel, $22. Andrea Lee, she is a +230 betting underdog, 7,100 on DK, 11 on FanDuel. Now, in the chat earlier, someone said, is Andrea Lee the fighter that Pete's planting his flag on this week?
No, I'm not planting my flag on Andrea Lee. Women's MMA, get the heck out of here. I'm not doing that. It's volatile, right? But I will tell you that I must secretly hate Mayce Barber. I've picked her correctly in some of her previous matchups. Um, you know, she's always in interesting spots, and she's more hype than actual performance. She throws heavy hands, but that was largely in the early parts of her career against Hannah Cifers. The JJ Aldrich win, aged well. Jillian Robertson too, but you know that you can bully Jillian Robertson if you can sprawl and brawl. I don't know, man. I'm not in love with this price tag at 9,100 at all. I actually don't have Mayce Barber today. I told you I'm being super aggressive today. I have no Holly Holm, no Giannis Santos, and no Mayce Barber. On the flip side, I have a ton of Andrea Lee. I think her price tag is broken. I think it's going to be a pretty close match. I don't trust the jiu-jitsu of Maycee Barber. She seems like she has some fight IQ issues. She is part of a good camp, a solid camp in Team Alpha Male, but like I don't know. I just question a lot of her decision making, and we know that Andrea Lee can throw up submissions. She attempted 3 against Antonina Shevchenko. Has a split decision loss to Lauren Murphy. This girl can scrap, and she's going to bite down on the mouthpiece. She can throw more well-rounded striking than Maycee Barber, who's reliant on her hands and misses half the time on her strikes. So I'm going to go with Andrea Lee to win this bout over Maycee Barber. And even if she doesn't win, I think it's just going to be close enough where you're happy to not get to Maycee Barber. That's basically where I'm like, fade Maycee Barber today, and just go the opposite route and get a little bit more aggressive on Andrea Lee.
Yeah, my fear is more on the Maycee Barber side of the equation of in a win, does she pay off that price? You know, she's gone to the decision in this winning streak that she's been on since she dropped those back-to-back fights. That to me is just the kind of concern for me. I don't know how much I really want to get there. I'll definitely be under the field of what the ownership is projecting on this one. Then we got a matchup between flyweights that got a little scrappy at the weigh-ins yesterday. Manel Kape and 𝐿EX Manel Kape is a minus 190 betting favorite, plus 160 for 𝐿EX. Kape is 8,900 DK, 7,300 for Perez, and then 19-12. And, you know, I don't know if you noticed this, Pete. I know you like to go down the Instagram rabbit hole. I
saw
it. You know exactly where I'm going.
You know who I unchecked today.
Okay. Here's what I find fascinating about that. And so for people who don't know what we're talking about, 𝐿EX has been working at Syndicate. We all know Pete's not exactly a big fan of Syndicate MMA. But to me, what stuck out to me the most about that is 𝐿EX has essentially been the assistant head coach at Team Oyama. That's what stuck out to me the most about that is
Red
him,
flags.
Which makes you go, why?
Red flags, bro. Red flags like crazy. And when I saw that, obviously I'm already skeptical about 𝐿EX. Tell me his best win, Jason. I mean, in the UFC, I'll wait. It's a list of a lot of guys outside the UFC now, and it's like irrelevant pieces.
Joe Benavidez.
Well, he didn't win. He didn't beat Joe Benavidez. He lost to Joe, but he got knocked
that's
out.
Right. Yeah, Benavidez got him in those.
If
kind
he
of
beat
quick
Benavidez,
stoppage.
I would agree with you. I'd be like, yeah, that's a damn good win. But like 𝗫𝗄cy Formiga, Jordan Espinoza, Mark De La Rosa, Jose Torres, Eric Shelton, Carl John De Tomas. Who the hell is that? I'm gonna say Formiga, I guess.
Well, I mean, this to me with this fight is it comes down to whether this fight plays out on the feet or plays out on the ground. If you tell me this plays out on the feet, this is Manel Kape's fight to lose. If this thing is on the ground, I think it's 𝐿EX fight to lose.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. I've always thought that Manel Kape had better wrestling than what he's shown in the UFC. You know, he was always a guy that incorporated takedowns, and inside the UFC, he's fallen in love with his hands. Outside the UFC, he's fallen in love with his hands too. He doesn't need to go to that well so often because he's just so content picking people apart. In his debut, though, he kind of laced up his wrestling shoes and he went 2 of 7 against Alexandre Pantoja. What a really difficult debut, right? Like they throw Pantoja at you. That's how high this guy's ceiling is, in my opinion. He hits really hard, really dynamic, a little too patient at times, right? And a little too patient. And when a guy's super patient at 8,900, you could either have a low volume early win or just a low volume calculated, performance. So it's like, I don't know. I like Manel Kape from his KO upside. I think that there are too many question marks surrounding 𝐿EX. If you want to go to that well and you believe the hype of what he used to be and all that, it's just the man has not been the same. He suffered an early defeat to Deiveson Figueiredo back in 2020, then came back against Alexandre Pantoja, suffered a very quick finish as well in round 1. I'm kind of like off the 𝐿EX bandwagon, but it is 125 pounders, and these flyweights can always scrap, have high-paced fights, and perhaps Perez took it personal yesterday. I don't know what the hell that was about, but yeah, you can make a case for a flyweight. I'd rather make a case for a flyweight than than some other fights. But Alex Perez is a guy I'm just kind of letting the public get a little aggressive with that name value.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why to get to Alex Perez because of the price point, but I really think that this is Manel Kape's fight to lose here. But I think you bring up the great point of even a Manel Kape knockout victory, say in the first round, the concern would be is it just so low volume that we don't get the points that potentially we want there. Let's move over. Next up, we got Chidi 𝗫𝐿 taking on Albert Duraev. Chidi 𝗫𝐿 is a minus 155 betting favorite, plus 130 for Duraev. Over on DK, 8,800 for Chidi 𝗫𝐿, 7,400 for Albert Duraev, and then 18 and 12 over there on FanDuel. Pete, this is one of these fights that I think you got to get to.
Yeah, I think when I made my groups on stochastic.fantasycruncher.com, this is one of the fights I prioritized. I made a group where I got to either Chidi 𝗫𝐿 or Albert Duraev. I just view this fight as super volatile, and what comes first? Does Chidi knock out Duraev because Duraev's durability, and if history repeats itself, he's been knocked out in the past. If Chidi gets taken down, Jason Floyd submitting Chidi 𝗫𝐿. I think that Duraev's ground game in the past and regionally was much better than what he's shown in the UFC. Somewhat of a suspect gas tank, but I think that Duraev, a lot of fights end up on the mat. You know what I mean? They really do, and that's why I kind of always lean towards the wrestlers and grapplers despite my striking background. I thought that Chidi 𝗫𝐿 defended some of the takedown attempts from Gregory Rodriguez really well, but when he was ultimately put on the mat, there were some red flags. I didn't see him going for an underhook. I didn't see him getting to a hip. I saw him kind of like he's great when he's the hammer, but the second that the tide turned and he became the nail, the door was like staring him in the face, and he kind of wanted out. This is a super volatile fight. I'm ready to look stupid either way. I'm going to go with the underdog in Albert Duraev. I really am. He's training at Extreme Couture. I know that at least he has some competent training partners. I know that Eric Nicksick, Sean Strickland, all those guys, a part of Extreme Couture, are pushing him or they're beating him up. So at least he's getting good rounds in. I can say that Chidi 𝗫𝐿 is getting some great striking rounds in with his brother Anthony and the guys at his training camp.
Yeah.
But is he truly putting the work in where he needs it the most in the grappling department? So despite the volatility, I'm going to be picking Albert Duraev here, and I'm ready to look dumb, but it's okay.
Look, I think it's every time Chidi fights, everyone knows that you don't want to get into a kickboxing matchup. This is what the Njokuani brothers do. I mean, you want to try to get them to the ground, but I think it's a hard fight for me to avoid in GPPs.
100%.
I mean, in a cash game aspect, it's a boom bust type situation in terms of that one. Next up, we got Tucker Lutz taking on Daniel Pineda. Tucker Lutz is a 3-1 betting favorite, plus 240 for Pineda. Tucker is 9,200 on DK, $21 on FanDuel, and Daniel Pineda is 7,000 on DK and 9 on FanDuel.
Yeah, real quick, we got 150 people in here checking us out, and I really appreciate it. It was kind of a last minute show, so really thankful you guys are in here. If you can hit that like button, get us over 150 likes, that would be great. Truly appreciated. And all the kind words in chat, yeah, I really appreciate you guys congratulating me. It means a lot. As far as this fight between Tucker Lutz and Daniel Pineda, I was ready to plant my flag on Tucker Lutz as being one of my favorite plays on the slate. Just Pineda's a guy I've not really had a lot of faith in. He's hittable. He gasses. Yes, he has a wealth of experience. He's 4-5-1 in the UFC, but outside the UFC, he has tons of MMA fights. So with all those MMA fights comes experience, but also a lot of miles on that body. So, and Tucker Lutz is a guy who's a finisher. Hasn't really shown that in the UFC at all. He's been 15 minutes in both of his fights. 15-minute decision over Kevin Aguilar. Went the distance, didn't get submitted against Patrick Sabatini. Didn't really do a whole lot. Didn't really have a good performance. I was ready to plant my flag until I saw Daniel Pineda at the weigh-in, because I was looking on his social media, and he's a guy that seems a little absent from social media as far as like posting about himself. You got to be careful with that. And then when I saw him at the weigh-in, I was like, yeah, he looks good. He doesn't look like flabby, kind of out of shape Daniel Pineda. So I retracted my flag plant. I'm still in favor of Tucker Lutz here, but Daniel Pineda has some really good jiu-jitsu, and just he's okay everywhere. Whereas if you kind of like have a lapse in judgment, or you aren't prepared in one area, perhaps the wealth of experience that Pineda has, he can use it against you. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Tucker Lutz still here at 9,200, but like I I just like the fight. So this is the second fight that I targeted in my groups, and I just want to get to somebody in this fight.
Next up, we got Steven Peterson taking on Lucas Alexander. Steven Peterson, minus 145, plus 300 for Lucas Alexander. I think actually that's plus 200. 8,700 for Steven Peterson on DK, 16 on FanDuel, and then Lucas Alexander, 7,500 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. This 7,500 range is kind of a range we always kind of try to target.
Yeah, it is. But guess what? I got some stuff to tell you, and I feel really bad about what I'm about to say. But Lucas Alexander is training with one of my striking coaches that I met and trained with a lot out in New Mexico. And Crew Dom is working with Lucas Alexander a lot. And we know that Lucas Alexander is also a part of Fusion. But I do know every time I'm looking on social media and every time I see him, he's hitting pads or he's striking sparring. He has a ton of Muay Thai fights. I think that this is a guy that trains jiu-jitsu, but definitely not as much as he needs to, because he does look like a fish out of water when he gets put on his back, or if he gets taken down. He's susceptible to submission finishes, as evidenced in the Joanderson Brito debut. Tough debut, right? It really is. But if you go back even regionally, you can see this guy can get controlled. He can get taken down. He can get submitted. He looks like a blue belt, in my opinion. I know he just got promoted to purple belt, but Steven Peterson's a very tough out. I understand that he's hittable. I understand that he's like a punching bag chasing you around. It's kind of like Darren Elkins in a way. He'll get takedowns. He will throw high volume. He's aggressive. You know he's going to step forward and try to push the action. I am planting my flag on Steven Peterson today. And I feel bad about it, but I am. I just think the takedowns are there, and he's a guy that attempts a ton of submissions as well. He attempted a submission over 𝗵𝐵ESSET, and that was somewhat surprising because I know 𝗵𝐵ESSET is a very talented fighter up here in New England, has good hands, good jiu-jitsu, and when I saw him kind of negate everything that Bissett threw at him, from striking to grappling and all that, I'm like, okay, this guy must have like suffocating top game. So then when he beat he lost to Luis Pena, but landed 4 of 8 takedowns. The takedowns are there, man. This guy, Steven Peterson, 8,700, he's at that sweet spot. And I'm planting my flag on Steven Peterson. I don't think that Lucas Alexander is going to knock him out. I know that my old coach is phenomenal, and he's going to have Alexander look amazing on the feet. He's probably going to hurt Peterson. But what happens if he gets taken down? I'm going to trust the guy that trains at Fortis MMA, and I'm going to trust the guy that, hasn't been knocked out in the UFC, and he's fought Brandon Davis, Bissett, Pena, Caceres, Bravo, Julian Erosa. So, yeah, give me Steven Peterson by a landslide.
Next up, we have got Trevin Giles taking on Preston Parsons. 8,200 for Giles, 8,000 for Parsons, 15 and 17 over there, respectively. And this is a straight-up pick-em on the betting odds, Pete, at minus 110.
Yeah, it's a pick-em, and it's like, if you go back and you look at who Trevin Giles has fought throughout his career, it's like he should beat Preston Parsons. Preston Parsons brings a ton of takedowns to the table. I think that he's talented. He attempted 5 submissions against Evan Elder, which is unheard of amount. He can get takedowns. He can reverse if you get on top of him. I think from a striking standpoint, he's at a significant disadvantage over Trevin Giles. Giles is the same guy that, was able to go the distance against James Krause, has a knockout victory over Bavon Lewis, beat Roman Dolidze, who that ages exceptionally well because Dolidze arguably beat Marvin Vettori last weekend. You know what I mean? So I think that Trevin Giles is the pick for me. He needs to sprawl and brawl. But again, it's like, this could be against the cage a lot with Preston Parsons, desperately shooting takedowns. So it's a fight I'm just torn on. It's a lean towards Trevin Giles. And if you had an argument to get to Preston Parsons, I look at my lineups right now and it's like I have plenty of them. I got 20% Preston Parsons. I'm completely fine getting to him.
Yeah, to me it's it's not a fight I love either way, just because I just think, I think it's more a GPP fight than it is a cash games for me, just because of
Mhm.
my view of it. Next up, we got CJ Vergara taking on Daniel Da Silva, minus 240 for Vergara, Da Silva plus 200. Vergara 9,300 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, and then Daniel Da Silva 6,900 on DK, $10 on FanDuel.
Yeah, this fight is volatile. This is the third fight I put a part of my groups that I wanted to get to the winner of this. It makes complete sense why CJ Vergara is favored, but I don't think that the line should be as wide as it is. Daniel Lacerda is super dangerous early on. The issue is he has a 1 round gas tank. He's able to get finished, and he was, you know what I mean? Like, he's super volatile. If you go and you look at CJ Vergara, like, on paper, he's been the distance against Ode Osborne. He has a win over Clayton Rodriguez, who's super dangerous, more so of a striker than a grappler. I would actually consider that Daniel Lacerda is more of a grappler than a striker, even though he's well-rounded. Now, hear me out. I'm ready to look stupid this week, and I don't care, because based on how I'm making my lineups, I want to try to be as unique as possible. I am acting like Daniel Lacerda is going to win. I'm not locking him in. I'm not planting my flag. All I'm saying is a second camp with Diego Lima, shoot the box, and Charles Oliveira means something.
Mm.
It means something. And I thought that against Victor Altamirano, he looked really, really good until he got kicked or kneed in the body. I forget. Up until that, he looked excellent. He dropped Victor Altamirano, but he got finished, right? All I'm saying is, going back and watching CJ Vergara on the feet, he's going to have the advantage over Lacerda. Lacerda is chin up in the sky, leaves himself open to attacks, but Lacerda is going to get takedowns over CJ Vergara. It's a matter of if he can get him and keep him there. And Vergara has a really bad habit of giving up his back and kind of being in poor positions. And I actually think a guy in Daniel Lacerda might pick up his first UFC victory en route to a submission finish. So that's my bold call of the day. Don't really care if I'm right or wrong about it. And the way I can say it is, like, how much do I have of CJ Vergara? I have 35% Vergara. So it's not like I'm not saying that he's not a good play. This fight's an amazing fight. Lacerda, in my opinion, might pick up a submission finish. So that's where I'm building lineups.
Look, my bold call may be you may have to have the winner in the first and second fight of the night to take down a tournament.
I like it, man. I can't wait to hear about this first fight of the night, because this one's ugly to me.
Salvador and Altamirano, 8,300 for Salvador, 7,900 for Almirola, minus 120 for Salvador as the betting favorite in this one, 15-14. Look, there's ownership high on both sides of this equation. That's why I just kind of feel like I really believe the first two fights are really going to be the key to taking down GPPs.
Yeah, I'm a little lighter on this first fight than I was hoping. Well, I'm not light on the Altamirano side. I'm lighter on the Salvador side. I'm going to be leaning towards Altamirano over 15 minutes. He can get takedowns. The issues I have with his opponent Vinicius Salvador is hands low, poor striking defense, poor volume, good power, but that's over Shannon Ross on the Contender Series, and Shannon Ross has not aged well. It was kind of questionable that he was even in the UFC to begin with, but the location means everything, and that's why they threw him on that card. I will say that I'm going to be picking Victor Altamirano. Now, be careful, because he was dropped against Daniel Lacerda. He does have a funky, weird style about him. He kind of has, like, I don't know. He has the style of the guy who's shadow boxing at your local gym. You know what I mean? Like, he's just doing all sorts of weird stuff in the mirror and everything. And I don't know. I trust his well-rounded skills a little bit more. I know if it hits the mat, I trust his jiu-jitsu more than I trust Salvador. Going back to, regional fights, Salvador is taken down and controlled, and he does get back up to his feet, but man, it doesn't look pretty while it's down there. So I thought that Salvador would have a more of a physical advantage, like a height and stature type of situation, but I was kind of surprised at how good Victor Altamirano looks. So I'm going to be going with Victor Altamirano. This is a week where I like underdogs, so yeah, I'm all about it.
course, if you got any questions, you can leave those right in chat, or you can leave your questions in our Discord channel. Totally free to join. It's right there in the YouTube description. You can join our community. Great to always have these conversations throughout the weekend on fight day as we're all kind of comparing lineups and how we're going to go there. I mentioned we'll get some questions over here from Discord to kind of start this one off, Pete, here. First up from Joey, says, for big GPPs, do you think we need to get both Vergara and Lutz? If not, do you have a preferred play? Also, congrats again, brother.
Thank you. I think you need to get one of those fights. I don't think it's necessarily Lutz and Vergara, but like there in all of my lineups, I have at least one of the winners of those fights.
Yeah.
I think that if you're not getting to the underdogs in those matchups, where are you going? You must be going to Andrea Lee, must be going Marlon Vera. You know, outside of that, it's going to be an ugly looking lineup to on paper. You just got to roll with it, man.
Best pay up over 9K on DraftKings. Yeah, we've kind of talked about it, not really. We're highly home. I would X out of that equation. I would X out Macy Barber in this equation. So now I think this is really a Vergara, Lutz, and Landwehr conversation. The Landwehr one, I think, is an interesting part of this, just because we know Austin Lingo, his struggles with stopping the takedown.
Yeah,
there is a path to him getting 115.
Yeah, all day there's a path to that. I would hope for even more than that. I'm probably just gonna go. Okay, let's call it like it is. Landwehr's 3-2 in the UFC. Vergara's 1-2 in the UFC. Lutz is 1-1 in the UFC, and we know that Landwehr has a pretty accomplished regional and M1 career. So, like, I'm gonna say that Landwehr would be the best 9,000 option. I don't like the salary, but like, do I trust Vergara or Lutz more? That's when it comes down to, like, if you're valuing matchup more than skill. Like, do you like the matchups better for Vergara and Lutz? I'm just going to side with the more complete fighter in Nate Landwehr.
Of course, also, we do have our DraftKings contest going on as well. So $10 entry fee over there, top 3 payouts. So always great to get in those contests and, see if you can take me and Pete's money. Basically, that's about the best. I know that's the way some people kind of put it.
Yeah, it's been free money. Me just handing it out lately. So
I mentioned this. This is more related to last week's. Roma said, "Did you guys see or read the allegations that feel that Mokaev tapped 3 times during their fight?" Yeah, I saw that one there. I will say this on the Mokaev aspect. I'm actually kind of surprised that they're not that his team is not kind of convincing him that let's clean up these injuries. Let's go under the knife and get the shoulder and get the leg squared away.
yeah, I think I listened to an interview where Mokaev. There was no submission on. If he was put in submission, like he was cranking on his arm, and then you saw him tap, fine. But I looked at this like under a microscope. There was nothing. So the reason he was tapping, I guess Følio must have hit him in the back of the head, or no, he said his foot was caught in his shorts or something like that, and they had a brief discussion, and then Mokaev was like, no, it's all good. Go ahead. Something like that, and kind of like told him to continue fighting or something like that. Whatever. There was no tap, but it was kind of weird because you're grasping for straws, Mr. Følio.
Mentioned Tristan over in Discord asked about favorite plays on Prize Picks, and someone else commenting Sandhagen over on time for him, which, by the way, that fight time is 24.75. So you're basically saying main event goes a distance, which I don't mind. But yeah, that's the one I mentioned I love the most is the over a half takedown on Nate Landwehr. That's the one on Prize Picks that really sticks out to me. I think the under 10-minute fight time on Manel Kape, I think, is another interesting one. Other than that,
do you have a Peterson takedown prop on that?
1.5.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, it comes down to does he just need one? But I like that. That's what I think, in my opinion, today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that when I was over at Prize Picks, kind of looking at it, it's very evident to me of which fights Prize Picks believes is going to go the distance, just based on some of these significant strikes numbers. Obviously, 112.5 for Corey Sandhagen. I think the 68.5 significant strikes on Nate Landwehr is kind of high. Kind because I could see him, if he goes the takedown route, then you're not talking about significant strikes, you're just talking about total strikes. Just the way, and depending on how it's scored there. Next up says, for DraftKings GPP, who do you guys have more confidence in to smash their price? Lutz or Peterson? I'm getting a feeling Peterson would be a sleeper pick at 8,700. Looking at ownership on Steven Peterson, he's a proper play today.
Yeah, but he's not that bad. I'll have to refresh my ownership. Is he bad?
He's sub 30%.
Yeah, that's okay though. I mean, it's kind of like spread out ownership, but
well, and also we only have 11 fights today, so ownership is going to be inflated on some of these guys.
That's another reason why I chose to get to more underdogs too. It's like you need to have unique stuff happen. You know what I mean? In order to, so you're not chopping. Chopping's fine until you're like, yeah, I got a ton of winning lineups, and then like the optimal comes out, and you're like, I have a 150 way tie for $13, and it's like, man, that's like, you know what I mean? It's annoying.
Oh no, I'm with you on that one. Next question we got here is about the captain contest. Is coming from Sam saying best captain for DK. I think Lee and Lingo are the best dogs that could win. Thoughts? We kind of talked about that. I want to pull up the captain contest here.
Yeah, I'm doing it too.
By the way, it doesn't start. Captain contest doesn't start till 5:30 Eastern time. So
I'm unable to pull it up. I'd like to.
I mean, Steven Peterson 11-4, I think could be an interesting captain.
He better win today, because if not, it's an early night for me.
I mean, look, obviously I think a lot of people are going to look at that main event and the main event fighters of Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Vera. Corey Sandhagen 11-1 as a captain, Marlon Vera 10-5. I think a lot of people are going to look there. I mean, I think depending on the type of contest that you're playing in, would venture of who I would go for captain there. I mean, I would, if I'm playing these bigger contests, I'm trying to get away from that main event, the captain role, just because of it, it's going to allow you to become different.
100%, brother.
Let's go here to the next one. This Sean says, first off, congrats to you and Mom on Little Heat. Hope all is well. I heard a comment from John Anik about scoring, and he made a case for half point. Scoring, thought it was really interesting. Thoughts? No, we don't need half point. Sometimes these commissions can barely add 10s and 9s together. Now we're going to throw in a half point system in here.
Yeah. You can't confuse people with numbers like that. The 10-9 system is difficult to add and subtract and all that enough. Never mind.
This is a reality. Last week, as I'm scoring the main event live, I'm like, okay, there's a 10-8 round here. Okay, now I'm going through, it's. By the way, I had the main event last week to draw.
Who was the main event last week?
Usman and Edwards. I had 47-47 because of the point deduction.
Yeah, I think that was fair. I thought it was a close fight. I kind of didn't care either way. But it's not like there was so much damaging strikes like Leon. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, It was almost like back in the day where it's like you got to do enough to beat the champ type of thing. And did Usman do enough to beat the champ? Maybe not. So.
I thought I watched one of the interviews Colby Covington gave this week. And, I mean, look, take Colby what he says. But the most interesting thing that he pointed out, I want to say it was an interview with James Lynch. He said, the first thing I noticed was that Usman came out southpaw. And he says he never does that.
Yeah.
And he said, he goes, it was an immediate thing. He goes, I recognized immediately that was his adjustment to what Leon did in the first fight.
Yeah, because it doesn't negate the head kick, but it minimizes it. You know what I mean? It's like he'd have to sneak it around the shoulder a little bit. The liver kick is still there, but not so much. You did see what I was talking about of Leon fainting with the hip a lot, faking the knee, throwing a couple front kicks up the middle. They didn't land necessarily, but that was the correct game plan for Leon. I thought he looked good. I still think Colby Covington beats him. I truly do. I just think that the cardio is not there.
Yeah, I don't. Look, we'll see what happens here in a couple weeks. But if if I think if either one of those guys goes out there and has a highlight reel performance, I think they're going to jump to the top of the line.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy.
I will say this: I want to give kudos to Bilal Muhammad, because I don't know how many guys in his position would say, "Yeah, I'll take on Shavkat Rakhmonov."
Yeah. I mean, he's getting the Beneil Dariush treatment for that division.
Leon Edwards. He's a new Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
You know, the guy just can't. He just can't get that marketable fight. And you know,
I thought Leon was a little dirty in this past fight, if I was being honest.
What do you mean? Grabbing the fence, poking? You know,
I thought it was a little dirty. Yeah.
He literally had the trifecta of the fight. I mean, the fence grab was, as blatant. Like, I wish we saw more referees in the position. I want to say it was Herb Dean was a referee in the fight.
Yeah.
That would take a point away from a clear fence grab that stops a takedown.
I'll tell you what's the problem, though, is when they don't see. I disagree with the scoring system in a way. I think they should take a point and give the position. And then he was saying, no, I already took a point away for that. Well, that's kind of BS. I think that the position, you take the point away, and he was going to be down. So he needs to be down with a point deducted for trying to do that.
You go back 2 weeks ago in the Sun Tzu and Davey Graham fight. You know, it's great you take a point away, but the fighter loses out on an advantageous position. I mean, to me, it's bailing out. In that situation, it bailed out Leon Edwards from, being put on his back, or, previous to that, Davey Grant being put on his back. I mean,
because then the issue is, right? Like, let's say there's 3 minutes left in the round, Jason, right? He could have possibly been on the mat for 3 minutes. But now that you're starting him back in the center, now the rest of that round is played out with in space. So you know what I mean? It's just too many. There's too many things that can go wrong in MMA for you to do that. You know what I mean? It was kind of screwy. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm very much a big believer in it is not the referee's job to get you out of a bad position.
Yep.
I mean, how many times have we seen a situation where, a grappler is taking on a striker, and the striker's kind of looking at that referee, and it's like, no, it's not the referee's job for you to get off your butt.
Yeah, and trust me, I'm a striker, so like, I kind of had that mentality like when I was just breaking into the MMA game, but then it was quickly taken away, and I was just like, no, there's so much to this. That's why, like, when somebody takes somebody's back and they don't score it how it should be, that is a hard position to get, and that is a very advantageous position. So that certain positions should be weighed heavier. You know what I mean? Like, and they are, but I still think a lot of the judges just view the ground as the same.
Get to a question here from Jermaine asking about FanDuel picks here. So looking over FanDuel and the salaries here, I think it's kind of similar to DraftKings. I think it's hard to avoid the main event. I really don't want to get to a $23 Holly Holm. I just think that price tag is just way too much for what you're getting to here. Really don't want to get to a $22 Macy Barber. I don't mind getting to Manel Kape, but I feel like you got to get that first round victory for that to pay off in terms of a FanDuel scoring system. Njokuani Duraev, I think, is a fight you have to target on both FanDuel and on DraftKings. Steven Peterson, to me, I will say this, I think is a interesting leverage spot as a captain on FanDuel.
My boy today. He's my boy today. So I hope that he goes out there and 4-7 May, and they're going to have a good game plan, right? Saif Saud is going to make him do what he needs to do, and it's pretty clear. And I'll tell you this, and take this for whatever with a grain of salt, right? I looked on the tag videos and photos of of all these fighters, and some of what's his name, Lucas Alexander's teammates posted a video, and it was like, tag that one guy that needs to be working on his jiu-jitsu and grappling, but chooses to spar anyways. Spar instead. And like, it's the jiu-jitsu coaches at Fusion XL, and everybody's wrestling and grappling, and it's like they pan over to Lucas Alexandre, and he's just striking. So take that for what it is, but your coach publicly calling you out like that, I think is, they could just be ball busting, but I kind of was like, yep, that's nudging me even more in Steven Peterson's direction.
Let's get a question here from Eric. He says, I understand Vera's path to victory, but what's his path to optimal with 1, slow starts 2, low volume 3, so many good underdogs? I mean, it's all great points Eric's bringing up. I mean, it's just, Cheeto's just one of those guys. He's always a slow starter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he is. He is what he is, right? And like Petr Yan is a slow starter too, and we were waiting, and I was waiting for Petr Yan to, now round 2, round 3, he's gonna find that right hand or that knee. It just never came. He could never really get out of first gear, and that's the issue with some of these fighters is how many times can they pull themselves from the jaws of defeat and then pull out something spectacular, or they're getting out volumed and all of a sudden they just pull the Leon Edwards with the head kick with seconds to spare. So I get it. It's completely fair. I do think that just the value in this being a back and forth. Marlon Vera is mean. So I kind of like, I like getting to a little bit more of a fighter when I know that some people say they got that dog in them, but I like fighters that are mean and like really want to hurt you. And Marlon Vera definitely has that mentality.
No doubt about it. Next up, we got Jorge popping in the chat. He says, who would you have on your core groups for DraftKings playing 20 laps today? Who would you have 100%?
Well, Steven Peterson is a guy that I'm all over today, and I hope that he does it. I think he's going to get a submission victory, and I actually think that the prop for submission is like plus 300 or something. Yeah. So that's a pretty nice prop. As far as who else am I targeting? My groups today are getting to the winner of CJ Vergara, Daniel Lacerda, getting to the winner of Tucker Lutz and Daniel Pineda, and then Chidi and Njokuani, Albert Duraev. Those fights just kind of like speak to me and smell like GPP.
Favorite underdogs for FanDuel this coming in from Andy. Obviously, Vera is got to stick out there. $17 is someone that I would look at. Andrea Lee, I think 11 is another interesting one, but kind of concerned about the ceiling of what she could score in terms of a decision here. Alex Perez at $12. If he can get the grappling route going, I think that's one that I would sit there. Duraev at $12, I think is an interesting play over there as an underdog. And then, the first fight of the night on FanDuel, I mean, it's 15 and 14 on each side of the equation.
Yeah, the first fight of the night is one of the hardest. The first fight of the night and then the Preston Parsons and Trevin Giles fight, they're kind of like the ones I'm struggling on the most. But I will say that just let's hope that armbar from guard does not happen in any of the women's MMA fights today. Because if it happens, I'm screwed. And just based on how my exposure is, I'm just hoping for decisions in those fights and not armbar from guard. Like if Yana Santos armbars Holly Holm or takes her back and chokes her out, I'm going to freak out.
Yeah. Next question. Juliana saying, anyone going to take down City?
I think Steven Peterson's taking Lucas Alexander to take down City. I really do. And takedown City could just be one and done. I can throw some numbers at you. He went 1 of 10. Don't like the efficiency. Against Brandon Davis, 2 of 6 against Matt Bessette, 4 of 8 against Big Luis Pena, 2 of 2 against Alex Caceres, and in some of the other fights, he just chose not to because he was comfortable standing and striking. So give me Steven Peterson as that sneaky takedown guy, but the other guy that really needs to get it going early is Albert Duraev.
Next up, Hockey Freak Sean says, Santos just had a baby. Does it affect her training?
I don't know how old the baby is, but I will tell you that, I'm not a dad for a long time, but in a couple of days, it affects your sleep 100%. Trying to juggle a million things, I would imagine, is difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of help, family members coming to help you. I don't think the baby's that young. He might be, but I don't know. Sometimes, like, what's her name? The amazing jiu-jitsu girl, Mackenzie Dern, she had a baby. She came back just fine. So perhaps Yana can do the same.
Yeah. Next question comes from Frank. Who are your cash locks?
Ooh, Jason question. That's a Jason question.
Ooh. I hate to say
I bet you say Sandhagen.
No. I think Nate Landwehr is my cash lock.
Really?
I mean, look, he is there potential volatility there? But I would probably, that's where I'd probably go. I mean, there's not things like I'm super have a ton of confidence in. I mean, Nate to me is, because I really see the takedown being a aspect that he can go to here and really control the fight, because Lingo just doesn't do well with it.
You stacking in cash today for the main event?
Yes, I would, yeah. I don't know if that'll be my main cash lineup, but I see myself getting there.
Okay, makes sense.
I mean, it's also 11 fights too, but like the fear I think you would have in stacking the main event is it's a Sandhagen win and Vera just goes out there and gets you 40 points.
Yeah.
And it is that in cash, I think you can cash in that situation, but GPPs I would really be a struggle with.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The one thing that I thought was interesting is like the loss to Song Yadong that Marlon Vera had. He scored 57 in a loss, and that was a 3-round fight. Went 2 of 3 in the takedown department. I just think that's interesting. So that's why I was a little bit more aggressive towards Marlon Vera today and in the public.
DraftKings question here coming in from Dylan. He says, GPP, Lutz, or Peterson? I'm pretty sure I know where you're going with that one.
Yeah, you already know where I'm going with that one. I was planting my flag on Lutz, but then I pivoted to Peterson.
Next up comes from Joshua. Says, do you really have faith in Duraev's wrestling? Doesn't seem good at all, and Chidi will be at distance all night.
I mean, I really don't have faith in either one of these guys. I don't think that they're going to climb the rankings. So it comes down to who executes the correct game plan, and who does what first. I think the straight shots of Chidi and Njokuani, the front kicks to the body, are great. He needs to limit the low, like sloppy and slow kicks so he doesn't get put on his backside. A lot of fights do end up on the mat, and just from a skill standpoint, there's a glaring hole. Chidi's ground game is much worse than Albert Duraev striking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I'm saying. That's why I kind of got a little bit more aggressive on Duraev.
Of course, we just got a couple minutes here left in the show, so be sure to get any questions in. Of course, if you want to join our Discord channel, you got any questions for us? I'll be here in the office working most of the day, so I'll have the Discord channel up. So if you got any questions, be sure to hit that up. Also, of course, we got our DraftKings contest over there. You can click that right there in the link. It's also pinned here on the YouTube chat as well. So if you got any, you want to hop in there and try to take down, let's not make Pete feel too bad.
I know. I still got to join the contest. So once I get out of here,
you've had some other things going on this week.
Yeah, a little bit. But I was happy that everything went well, and then I was just trying to figure out my next couple of days, and I'm like, I mean, I'm going to be home, and I asked Bree, and Bree's like, oh yeah, of course. So I'm like, yeah. We're going to do a show. So I'm just going to text my boy, and I figured you were down for it. So
yeah.
Happy we were able to put this together for you guys a little bit last minute, and we still had, a great amount of people tuning into the show. Almost 200 people checking us out live. Truly appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel here at Fight HQ, please do so. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That's really, really helpful. And in addition to that, before you guys head out, please like that button. Get us over 100 likes. That would be extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah, you're probably like, why is Jason responding to my text message at 4:00 in the morning?
I was still up when you responded to me, so it didn't really matter. All these days and hours have blended together, so it's kind of like 20-minute nap. That's the sleep, and it's kind of just spread out. But I ain't complaining at all. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of the power nap. Big fan of the power nap. Jorge's got a question here. He says, "What's your take on Nate versus Lingo?" I like Nate Landwehr. I've talked about that. I think there's a takedown aspect to this, but the one thing is that live and die by the sword, and he's going to give Lingo opportunities. Just matter whether Lingo can take advantage of it. So, like, if you're looking for that, that low salary play, I don't mind getting Lingo, but I do like Nate here.
How I'll say it is this: if Landwehr grapples, 80-20 in favor of Landwehr. If Landwehr just chooses to strike, it's a 60-40 fight. They're swinging 4-ounce gloves, and they both throw wide shots. So a looping shot could land, but I'm picking Nate Landwehr, but I don't hate the Austin Lingo underdog. The public seems to like him today, so I'm getting to him.
We'll finish on this question here from Barry. He says, any thoughts on Cheeto's last 4 opponents were past their prime?
All right, it's a fair point. I mean, let me look and see who he fought. Dominic Cruz, tough out. I don't think you can say that about Rob Font. So I still think that Rob Font's in this prime. I don't know. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Davey Grant's doing just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And Frankie Edgar is past his prime. So I would agree with 2 of those 4. But I mean, those are still good wins. It doesn't, it's still a really good win.
I will tell you, man, when we talk about the month of April, that Rob Font, Adrian Yanez fight may be one of my most fights I'm excited for the most.
It's going to be a hell of a fight. Hell of a fight. It's going to be a boxing fight with MMA gloves on, so.
Oh, no doubt about it. But Pete, of course, appreciate chopping up here for the last hour, talking about UFC San Antonio. Of course, as I mentioned, I'll be in that Discord channel throughout the night, so totally free to join. All you got to do is go right there in the YouTube information, and you can join our channel. Of course, also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, we really appreciate if you can do that, just like Pete said. And Pete, any things you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate it. Just get to your underdogs today. I mean, the worst that can happen is that no underdogs come through, and everybody chops anyways because they spent all their salary. So get a little creative today with your builds, and I think on an 11-fight card, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, if you're building in Fantasy Cruncher, I mean, I think one of the things to do is tell Cruncher to leave money on the table. Maybe set it at 48.7 as your peak. Just kind of throw a number out there. That's something I do. I particularly do it in NASCAR a lot as a way to get different, but it's definitely a way to get different in MMA. But we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of Fight HQ. Of course, no show next week because, Pete, we have no UFC event next week.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah, no UFC, but then it's right back on the train. Don't worry.
We have Bellator next week?
Yes, you have a Bellator event on Friday.
Maybe we'll be here for Bellator.
Maybe.
We'll see. Maybe not. We'll see. But regardless, we'll have some picks in the Discord channel and kind of go back and forth discussing it with the community. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. Good luck. Win some money and bink that tournament for the baby.
That's exactly, man. Awesome. Appreciate everyone tuning in. That's going to wrap up for this edition of the Fight HQ preview for UFC San Antonio.